for the new folks that are joining us, just really quick, I'll go through a high-level overview of PSTrax. And basically, our goal at PSTrax is to help first responder agencies become more efficient in their operations and also their logistics management. So that's what we help solve if you're having problems in those areas. We've been in business for 12 years now, and we're based out in Littleton, Colorado, which is just south of Denver by a few miles. And we work with about 450 agencies across the country, up in Canada, and also down in Australia, all sizes and all variations and types, all the way from single station volunteer departments up to big metropolitan departments. Miami-Dade County is our biggest department we work with. They have, gosh, close to 100 stations down there in Florida. And one thing we're really proud of is we have a 98.5% retention rate. So I think that speaks to a couple of things. The system itself is very proven, which is the most important thing. It's very functional, very easy to use. But secondly, and equally as important, is we provide ongoing service and support all the way through. So anytime you need help or changes, you can call us up. You get a live person on the phone, and we can help you with any of those changes you need. This is kind of what the system looks like. So essentially, we take all of your checks, we put it into one place. All of your spreadsheets and all of your paper checklists, that'll go away, and all of that information will become electronic. So you can go into the system, you can download that information anytime you need it. You can also track issues. So as the crews find problems, so maybe a flat tire with a vehicle or a dent in the bumper or whatever it might be, they can set an alert and notify the right people in your department about that issue. And I'll show you an example of that in the demo. It is a cloud-based system, so you can use any device you want. Most folks will use, for the crews at least, the crews will usually use an iPad or Toughbook or a phone, just depending on what their agency has available for them. And we do support barcode and QR codes. Quite frankly, most departments don't use that on the vehicle side. Sometimes they will on the equipment side for administrators, but the way we have the system set up for the crew members is pretty easy for them to just go through and mark things off. Really quickly, in terms of how we work, I mentioned it before. One thing that makes PSTrax really unique is that we build the entire system for you. So I imagine on your vehicles, you probably have a lot of different check sheets that you're tracking right now, maybe a basic daily check, a more thorough weekly check. You might have PM schedules that happen, every 6 months or whatever it might be. So we take all those checklists, you basically just email them to us, and then our team will actually build your entire system for you. So we manage the project, we import all of your data, we set it up for your department. So it's actually custom configured for exactly what you guys are doing at your agency. And then once we have it built, we basically hand it back turnkey and say, okay, here's your system. We have it all ready for you. We train you on it. We help you roll it out to the crews. And then, like I mentioned, if there's ever any ongoing changes, so if you get a new vehicle, you can call us up and we'll load that in there for you. If you get maybe a new piece of inventory and you want to add it to a checklist, or you just want to move things around, from vehicle to vehicle, you can call us up and we'll take care of that for you. At the same time, you don't have to rely on us. You have all those same abilities. So if you want to go in the system and make those changes yourself, you can certainly do that too. Okay, so now let's hop into the topic for today, which is NFPA 1911. I'm sure a lot of you, especially if you're in charge of your vehicles right now, you're familiar with this portion of NFPA. Basically, it helps ensure that all of the in-service apparatus are serviced and maintained, kept in a safe condition, and ready to go out on a call at all times. This chapter, so to speak, of NFPA, or this portion of NFPA, the 1911, there is about 117 pages, so we won't go through it all today. There's a lot that you can read through and get a lot of details. I pulled out just some of the the most high level important items that I felt were pertinent for today's conversation. One of them being the daily and weekly visual and operational checks. So basically, as part of NFPA 1911, it recommends doing checks, basically having checklists to go around, make sure the vehicle is in operating condition, there aren't any defects or deficiencies with it. And if there are any deficiencies, making sure you have a process to report that and also pull it out of service until that vehicle is able to get repaired and back in an operational state. As it relates to PSTrax, NFPA 1911, there's a big section on maintaining a record of all these checks. And most departments today still are doing their checks either on paper sheets, or I've actually visited some bigger departments in the country, and I won't mention any names, but they didn't even have check sheets. They were just doing it in their minds, so they weren't even documenting that it was done. They were just having the crews literally walk around the truck, just visually check it, but they weren't documenting anything. And as the old adage goes, if it wasn't documented, it never happened. And that's certainly the case if there's, ever an accident or an audit or anything like that. Usually the first thing that those folks ask for is, show me all your records, show me the history of all the checks that you've done on this vehicle. The other big thing in 1911 it talks about is just the inspection, the maintenance, the testing of the vehicles. And there's literally a section for each of these categories here. But from a high level, these are the different areas that should be being checked on the vehicles as you're doing those checklists. A few of the examples they have within 1911, this is a daily, weekly check sheet. So pretty straightforward, checking the engine, the outside, the cab. There's some other categories to it as well. I'm happy to send this along. I kind of had to do a screenshot of it, so a little bit got cut off here. But this is just a pretty standard check sheet that most agencies will have something like this that you're probably doing right now to go around and check off your vehicles. They also had a quarterly annual inspection. So this is a little more detailed, kind of geared more towards like a PM checklist. And again, happy to send over the full list of this if you don't have something like this today and you'd like to see it. Obviously, for certain vehicles, you're going to have other checklists that might apply. So like for a ladder truck, or if you have an aerial, you're going to have other checks and other inspections that go along with that rig. So this was an example of an aerial checklist that NFPA provided. They also had a pump checklist with some of the crucial checks for that. So I kind of went through those quick because what we found is, although NFPA provides some guidelines, they really are guidelines. And what we've found across the whole country is every single department has different variations of the checklist that they're checking. Everyone has kind of a different flavor. So some folks have NFPA checklists they go off of. Depending on the state you're in, you might have other DOT checklists that you're required to do. And then you might even have department specific checklists. So things that you as an agency have implemented based on your past experiences and what you want to check. So once you kind of couple all those things together, it really is the case where every department's different. Everyone, we've literally never had two departments with the exact same checklist. And then on top of that complexity, you get into things like each apparatus is different, right? You might have standardization across your apparatuses, but even still, there's usually some variation where they might have different equipment and different compartments. And so all these things combined, it really is a challenging component for a lot of agencies to solve. And that's a big reason why a lot of folks are still using paper today, is because it kind of seems like a daunting task to try to change all of that. Kind of where we come into play at PSTrax is basically we take all those check sheets that you're doing on paper right now or in your head as you walk around the vehicle, and we take those, we build them into the system for you. And what's nice is when a crew member logs in, it literally just tells them in a big number what they have due that day. So they don't have to remember, what's even due. The system will just populate with exactly what's due that day. And usually it's not the daily checks that the crew members have a hard time remembering, obviously, because they're doing that every day. But it's all the odd things like the every 3-month checks or the every 6-month checks, the kind of the oddball checklists that tend to fall through the cracks just because they aren't as frequent. So with the system, again, it'll just pre-populate, and I'll show you this in the demo, but it'll just pre-populate with exactly what's due. And so none of those things will be forgotten. Kind of an interesting fact, about 80% of agencies across the country, here in the US at least, still use paper or spreadsheets to track all their vehicle inspections, which is kind of a pretty amazing statistic to think about in the digital age that we're in today. We are definitely seeing a trend towards more and more agencies wanting to go to an electronic system and kind of make their department kind of catch up to 21st century standards, so to speak. So we definitely are seeing that movement, so to speak. But again, I think this just speaks to the fact that there's a lot of complexity in this, and sometimes it's, from an agency's perspective, it's almost easier to just keep doing what you're doing than to switch over. And again, that's where with PSTrax, where we I think where we're really helpful is we'll do all that work for you. Basically just send us your check sheets today. We'll do that heavy lifting and we'll convert them into the system for you. Okay, so in terms of PSTrax and the different modules we have 7 modules. If you didn't know that, they're a la carte, so you can pick and choose which ones you would like to use. So if vehicles is your low-hanging fruit, you can certainly just start with that one, and we'll be going through that a little bit more today. So the vehicle module itself, it includes everything that rolls on your rigs. So, all the check sheets that you have related to that rig. I mentioned before, you might have a daily morning check sheet that the crews do, maybe a full inventory that they do every week, PM schedules, your aerial checks, pump checks, all those different checklists that you have. We take those and we build them into the system. And you can have unlimited schedules, unlimited checks, and we customize it for each rig, right? So every compartment on that rig with all the items inside, we build that one by one for each vehicle that you have. Maybe one last thing I'll just point out on this slide. In one of the poll questions, we asked, kind of how much or what's the value of your vehicle fleet right now? And I think several of the folks joining were in that $0 to $5 million range, and one agency was in the $15 million range and above, so probably a bigger agency. So the reason I asked Robbie to include that poll question is there's a lot of, as you guys know, I'm preaching to the choir here, but there's a lot of money involved with the vehicles, all the equipment on them, and just making sure they're operational. And so at the end of the presentation, we can talk a little bit more about pricing for the vehicle module. But essentially for a heavy vehicle like an engine, a ladder, an ambulance, it's $200 per year to track that vehicle and within PSTrax and have all the records and all the information about it. So in the grand scheme of things, when you're thinking about the total valuation of your fleet, it's a pretty nominal amount to do that. The support vehicles, so things that are smaller like your brush trucks and tenders, tankers, those kinds of vehicles, those are $75 per year. So they're even a little bit less expensive. So again, we'll touch on that later, but just wanted to kind of point that out as we're talking about the vehicles. And if there's any questions on that, happy to answer those. towards the end.
Ryan,
yeah, go ahead, Robbie.
Sorry to interrupt real quick. I just wanted to address this, and I know you're going to get into this when we get into the demonstration. Got a question from Saul. Thanks for the question. He's looking at, if you want to check it out too, Ryan, but basically inspectors look for signatures from the mechanics and from the drivers, kind of like a dual authentication system in a way. And maybe you can touch on that briefly, and then kind of walk through what we can do in the demo. Thanks for the question, Saul.
Yeah, happy to share that with you, Saul. Literally every check that's being logged in the system has an electronic signature of what crew member logged it. So you can go in at any time, pull up your records for a vehicle, and every single check. So if you have a checklist and there's 50 checks on it, each of those individual checks, it's going to share exactly what crew member completed that and what time it was completed. So you have that digital record anytime that you need it. Yeah, and I'll show you that in the system as well. But yeah, great question.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, no worries, Robbie. Thanks for stopping me to ask that. On the pricing side of things, we also we get a lot of feedback from folks. They see the system, they go, yeah, this is great. This, we really need something like this. But the reality is, we're really strapped for money right now. We had budget cuts with COVID, and what we need to do is we need to go to the city council or to our commissioner, and we need to present the case for this, right? We need to show them why we need to invest in a system like PSTrax. And so what we did here is we kind of took all the high level, I guess, ROI points, so to speak, all the areas that we can help you be more efficient in. And I won't go through them all right now, but if you'd like a copy of this, we can send that over to you. And what we did, just to take it one step further, is we met with our departments and we actually quantified that. So, when you're using PSTrax, and so you move from paper over to PSTrax, what is the savings that you can anticipate seeing? And in year one of using the system, we found that most departments actually had a $7 savings for each dollar they invested in the system. And then in years 2 and beyond, it actually goes up a little bit higher to about $12 per dollar invested. So I just wanted to point that out, because although there is a cost with any system you're purchasing, there actually is a return, and we have an ROI calculator that you can fill out yourself to kind of estimate that return for your department. On top of that, we actually have a guarantee, a money-back guarantee, where for the vehicle module, if you use it for a year and you aren't seeing the savings that you thought, you can let us know and we'll refund that money for you. So I think that's all I have on the slides. We'll come back to some of our upcoming webinars in a little bit, but Robbie, I'll just check in with you real quick before I hop into the demo. Any other questions?
No, that was it. I just wanted to grab that quick one from Saul before you jumped into the demo. So.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. All right, well, great. Let's hop in here. Again, it's a cloud-based system, so you can use any device that you want, and every crew member will have their own, login information here. When we log in, it's going to bring us to our home station dashboard. So you can see I'm at station 1 right now, and if you're ever at a different location, or maybe you're filling in somewhere else for the day, you can always change your view and go to a dashboard for another either station or other location that you might have. Oops. Let me click station 1. There we go. So back here on your homepage dashboard at station 1, there's kind of 3 components just to give you the layout of it. The schedule essentially is all of our modules, and we'll hop into this in a second here, but anywhere you see a number that represents something that's due for the crews that day. Also on the homepage is any open alerts. So when we do have issues, we can set an alert that gets sent off to the right people, but it also will stay right here on the homepage front and center. So what's really nice about that is if A shift sets an alert and then B shift comes on tomorrow, B shift can log on and see exactly what's going on. And especially for you folks, if any of you are kind of managing the vehicle alerts right now in terms of responding to those alerts, you may be receiving a lot of phone calls or emails, or even getting duplicate alerts sent to you about the same issue. This will kind of help streamline that and resolve those issues for you. Finally, on the right-hand side, this is the journal, which is kind of like a digital whiteboard. If there's any communications that you'd like to post, we have a workout, looks like we posted today. You can use it for call reports, station tours, things like that. You can post it to a station or to the entire department, and then the crew members can see that when they log in. Okay, so that's kind of the high-level layout of the LAN, so to speak. Hopping into the vehicle module, let's go ahead and look at engine 1 down here below. So at your station, you're just going to see the vehicles you have currently at that location. So I have engine 1, medic 1, brush 1. On engine 1, I have 93 checks due, so I can just click right into that. And that'll bring me to my checklist here. So from a crew member's perspective, it's really easy. They just log in, they click on the number, it brings them to their checklist, and then they can start doing their checks just like this. They can go down the list, perform their checks, and they don't have to complete everything at once. You know, sometimes you'll get interrupted or you get called out to an alarm and you need to take off. So we can just go through, do a few of these here. A few nice little features to point out. You can attach training resources to any of these. So if you have like a picture that you want to attach, we just have some examples here. What's this one? Yeah, this is just kind of a picture of the rig itself. You can link out to training videos as well, or other pictures if you have resource documents like PDFs. So that just helps the crews have a little more, kind of just a little more knowledge that they can reference as they go through and complete these. You can also see if there's ever a little red alarm bell, that means there's an alert open for this task. So we can click that, and I can see that earlier today, I actually set an alert that the steering fluid, that there's a leak with it, with the power steering fluid. So again, this is just another reminder for the crews as they go through that, hey, we already have notified the right people of that. We don't need to re-report that same issue. If we do have a new issue, we can set a new alert by clicking this red yield sign. So we'll say we have a radiator fluid leak now. And then we can log these off. So I'm just going to log these 5 checks that I've done. Here's my review page. So if it all looks correct, I can go ahead and log these. And once I log them, they're each going to be documented in the system. And I'll show you, going back to Saul's question, where that history lives. Because we have this alert set as well, once we log them, it's going to bring us to an alert details page. And this is where we can input more information about that problem. You can see it automatically defaulted to our vehicle maintenance category because that's what we had set as a default. But if you ever need to change the category, you can have unlimited categories in here, and these are all customized based on what you'd like. But what's nice is based on the category down here below, you can nominate who are the people or the groups of people that need to receive those alerts. And you can have required folks in gray. Oh, sorry, my lights turned off in my office here. There we go. Guess I wasn't moving enough. So you can have required folks in gray, so I can't unclick those. And then you can also have optional people. So if you want to, copy someone on it, you can always copy those folks. You can also attach pictures. So this is really handy when the crews are out there and they're setting this alert. They can use the camera on their phone or their iPad and actually take pictures. So for you guys or the mechanics, when they receive those alerts, they can actually see a picture of what's going on. So we'll go ahead and set this alert. And when we set it, it'll be emailed and texted off to all these individuals. So we'll send that out. And then it'll bring us right back to our checklist. You'll notice that all those checks we did up here at the top, they're now gone. They basically disappear off the schedule because they're now completed. Up here in the upper right, there's that new alert that we just set. And if I go back to my home page here, that new alert will be right in the center of our alert section, right at the top, right there. And then also, one last thing, our number of checks is now decreased by 5 because we did those 5 checks. So typically what would happen in that situation, you might come in here and add a comment. So I don't know, let's just say be out, should check on it, pull out of service, bring up reserve. So whatever, notes or comments you want to relay back to the crews, you can add those. And when you do that, it'll just get added right to the alert right there. So all the crews back at the station, they'll know what's going on. And we can actually play this scenario out. If we wanted to mark a rig out of service because it's broken, we can come down here to engine 1. We can click the status of it. We can mark it as out of service. Also, usually when it's in the shop getting worked on, it's not getting checked every day. So you can deactivate all the scheduled checks that go with that rig. Once we move it to the out of service status, in a second here, it'll just turn red for us. There it goes. So now engine 1's out of service. And then what's nice is you can actually move this rig. So if it goes down to the shop to get worked on, we can move it out of station 1 and we can send it to our shop. And when we do that, you'll notice it disappears out of station 1 since it's no longer there. And if we go change our view and I look at my maintenance shop, we're now going to see engine 1 over here in the shop right there. And typically what would happen in this situation is then you would grab a reserve unit, like here's engine 10, which is a reserve, and then you can move that over, to station 1 to kind of take its place while that engine 1's getting worked on. I'm going to go ahead and move this back so my team doesn't get mad at me. A lot of times I move it and then I forget to put it back. So we'll put that engine 1 back in station 1. There we go. Actually, I'll go to station 1. But one thing that's really handy, especially if you're like the fleet manager for your agency, is the status report button up here at the top. This will show you where all your vehicles are at one time. And I kind of prefer the table view because you can filter it. But you can see all of your vehicles here. You can filter by a location. So if you want to see what's in the shop right now, you can do that. If you want to sort by status, so what's out of service or what's in service, just clear that out. Even reserve. So if you want to see where all your reserves are right now, you can pull those up and see what location they're in. So that's pretty handy. I've been to a lot of agencies where they've taken me into a room and they have a huge wall with kind of like basically stickers, for each of the vehicle names, and then during the day they're moving those stickers around to different locations just to keep track of them. So this kind of replaces that if you have something similar, but kind of a cool view of just where all your vehicles are right now. All right, so let's go back to station 1 here. We have engine 1 back. Going back to our alert example, where I had the radiator fluid leak that's low. Once you resolve that issue, you can come in here and close that out. So if we fix this, we can fix that issue. You can attach a cost to it. So this costs us $100 and other files that you might want to reference later. And then we're going to close it. Once we close it, it's going to disappear out of our alert section there because the crew members don't need to see that anymore, right? But all those alerts will get archived kind of behind the scenes. So from a reporting perspective, oops, I didn't click on it. There we go. From a reporting perspective, you can go into the alert archive and pull up a history of all the alerts. So if we want to see for engine one, you know, show me all the, all the vehicle maintenance alerts for whatever date range we want to see, we can just pull those up. And then down here below, it'll list those out for us one by one. So we can see, oh yeah, Robbie, question?
Brian, yeah, sorry, since you're running a report here too, Saul was following up and asking, you know, when you move reserves, a reserve rig from, you know, out of service into service, and is there a way to track that when they were taken from, more specifically from reserve to the front line? I figured you'll touch on that here.
Yeah, absolutely, Saul. Yeah, and I'll write that down just so I remember. I'll show you that right after this. You can pull up two different things. There's a apparatus details report that'll show you anytime that vehicle has moved or the status changes. And then there's also an out of service report that will automatically calculate all of the out of service time for that vehicle. And I'll show you that too. Yeah, great question. Thanks, Robbie.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so just to kind of wrap this up, this is all the alert history. You can see it keeps all the comments. If there's any pictures, it'll keep those as well. And then you can export this. So if you want to maybe drop it into Excel and tally up, you know, all of your maintenance costs for engine one, you can do that. Okay, so yeah, let me go back to our homepage, and going back to Saul's question, I'll kind of answer that here for you, Saul. So for engine one, the one we were just kind of playing with, if you go into apparatus details, I haven't been in here in a while, so I'm pretty sure this is the spot. So yeah, this is where you'll see all the details for that vehicle. So on the left-hand side, it's just kind of all the, you know, specific information about the vehicle. But on the right-hand side is the history. So as you can see when it moved from one location to another, and it'll track what user did that. And then anytime the status changes, it'll track that as well for you. So that's one half of that. The other part that's pretty cool is we have an out of service report. This is really handy if you ever need to justify replacing a rig. You can come in, you can pull up that apparatus, you can search, you know, whatever date range you want here. And then what it'll do is it'll automatically calculate the time that it was out of service. And if I scroll all the way down to the bottom, it'll tally that up. It'll sum that up for you at the bottom too. So if you have a rig that's been out of service half the year, this is really handy because you can download this report and then take that to the city council or the board or whoever it might be and say, you know, we aren't just making this up. This rig has been out of service for half a year, and here's the proof of that. So that's a pretty handy one too. Actually, while we're kind of on the reporting side, I should probably show you the logs. The logs are where, if you remember all those green check boxes we were doing when we were doing our vehicle checklist, each of those checks is being documented in the logs. So going back to Saul's question of having a history of not only the checks being done, but who actually did them, having a kind of an electronic signature to who completed each one, you can come into the logs and say, okay, for engine one, I want to just see all the checks that were done, you know, over this time period. And when you do that, it'll just list those out one by one. So here's each of the checks. I just did the last 2 days just to keep it simple, but here are the tasks that we completed. And then this is the crew member that log those off. So it's tracking who did each one of these and also what time they completed it. And you can see when it was completed and also when it was scheduled. So, these are all ones Dave did yesterday. It looks like Eric did some. If we scroll down, oh, there's some Sally did. And then I did some as well down here at the bottom. So you can see we've had multiple people doing checks. I forgot to mention this too, but because the system is cloud-based, you can have multiple crew members out doing checks at the same time on the same rig. So if you have like a big inventory day, you could have all 3 people or all 4 people out, each checking a different compartment, and they could be using their own device. And then as they check off that compartment, it'll just come off the schedule for everyone else. So that's another really nice feature. It just helps you work as a team to complete those checks. And if you want to drill down further, just to show you, like on engine 1, let's say we want to see all the odometer checks we've done. We have those in our weekly check. And here's the odometer task. We can go back as far as we want. So let's go back, I don't know, 2 years. And then this will show us over the last 2 years every odometer check we've done. And same thing, you'll see, the task, what crew member completed it, and in this case, we have a required note for that that task to make sure we capture what the mileage is. So you can see here's the mileage that was inputted by all these folks. And just like before, you can export all this too if you need to. So yeah, it's pretty neat. All that information is kind of right at your fingertips. And again, unfortunately, the reality is, sometimes there are accidents or audits, and when those occur, usually the first thing they ask for is a history or a record of all this documentation. And so what we found a lot of departments are doing right now is they have all these binders of paper records kind of scattered all across the department in different locations, and going back multiple years. So sometimes they'll even have a big storage room with just all these paper records. And so this kind of replaces that. And if you ever have a scenario where you need to pull up that information, you can just go in, download the logs like I just showed you, and you don't have to spend your time, flipping through binders of papers trying to find everything. So that's pretty helpful. Okay, so just a few more things on the vehicles, and then I'll open up to other questions. I showed you here the number here. These are all your scheduled checks. So anytime something is scheduled that's due, it'll pop up. But you may also have scenarios where you have as needed checks. So maybe you get back from a call and you want the crews to do like a post-call inventory check, or maybe you get back from a fire and you have a dent in the bumper and you need to report that. You can do as needed checks anytime that you need. So we can hop in here and you can have whatever type of as needed checklist you want. Like I mentioned, if we have a new issue, we can hop into our daily checks and just set an alert on an item if we need to do that. You can use this for fuel logs if you want to track your fuel logs and when you do your fill-ups. Actually, just so you guys know, this is kind of a more recent item, but some of the departments we work with around the country, they're required to do COVID-19 post-call checklists on their vehicles and actually, go around and thoroughly clean all the vehicles and disinfect them. So you can actually use this to complete those checks. And all the checks you see here, these are all customized based on what you want. So this is just kind of our demo example, but whatever checks you want to complete, we just build those as part of this checklist. And actually, kind of along those lines, we've had several departments actually use their COVID-19 funding as a way to purchase the vehicle module because it ties into these post-call checklists that they're doing. So anyways, you can do those post-call checklists anytime you want. One final thing I'll point out here is the transfer checklist. This is also a pretty a cool feature. Most departments that I talk to, if they have paper check sheets, when they transfer items, so like if you have a frontline rig that goes out of service and you physically transfer inventory items over to a reserve rig, they're usually just writing that on a whiteboard or even a sticky note sometimes. So we have these transfer checklists, and you can actually track the movement of those items. So if you're doing like an engine changeover, you can say, okay, I'm starting with engine one. I'm moving items over to, I don't know, I'll just say engine two. And then you can pick all the items that you're moving over. Some departments have a standard check or a standard list of items they move over every time. So in that case, you would just, transfer everything. Other departments kind of pick and choose what items they move over. So you can choose those items and then log that transfer, and it'll keep a record of that for you. So now that we've started that transfer, you can see here's our record of it. We can actually view it in a PDF if you ever need to, print that or view it that way. And it'll show you, what crew member moved them initially. And then eventually when we return those items, it'll track what crew member returned them as well. So I won't go through the whole process there, but you can return them and then close the transfer. But just wanted to kind of point those out. And finally, the last thing I wanted to show, because in my little slide deck, I talked a lot about how we customize it for each vehicle. So I'm going to go into the apparatus schedule. And this is just an administrator's page. So a normal crew member won't ever see this. But essentially, when you send us all of your checklists to start and we build your system for you, this is what we initially build, is kind of a master schedule for each of your vehicles. And this is engine one again. But you can see we have a daily check sheet. And then these are kind of the different task groups. And what we do is we list out each of the individual tasks that you want, and then we schedule those according to the frequency. So these are all daily. We have a weekly check sheet that's a little more thorough. And then for our inventories, we actually have, well, this is an EMS inventory. I thought I had oh, here it is, the monthly inventory. So we break out each of your compartments with the items inside. So we get really granular with it. We can schedule these on whatever frequency you want. These are like the first day of the month. And like I said, we build all this for you initially, but it's really easy to come in here and make changes. Like in this compartment, if you get a new item, you can come in and just say, I have a new item that I want to add in here. And once you do that, it'll just add it right into that compartment. And you can rearrange the order of these. So if you want to reorder the tasks or copy things to other apparatus or move them to other apparatus, you can do that too. Even whole groups, like whole compartments, you can move or copy those. So we try to keep it really easy for the administrators on the back side too, to make changes whenever you'd like to. Again, we're here to help you with those. So if you want to call us up, we can make all those changes on your behalf. And there's no additional charge for that. We're kind of like your administrative assistant, so you can use this as much or as little as you'd like to. Okay, Robbie. Well, I went through a lot there. First of all, I'll check in, see if there's any questions before I kind of hand it back to you.
Sure, sure. Thanks, Ryan. That's a lot of heavy lifting there through the vehicle module. I did have a follow-up meant to touch on earlier with Saul's first question with the DOT. Do we have can you just confirm on that I know it's probably state by state, but the DOT would accept those electronic signatures that you mentioned?
Yeah, I Saul, maybe you could shoot Robbie a note with what state you're in, and I could speak to that a little bit better. But yeah, we've never had a problem with that electronic signature like that. And Robbie, I don't know if Saul's responded. the state yet, but
in California, San Mateo. I was just looking them
oh
up.
yeah, yeah,
Thanks.
perfect. Yeah, we have a lot of gosh, about 50 departments in California, Saul, we work with. So yeah, never had an issue like that, and we work with some big ones too, like San Diego, City of San Diego, San Bernardino County, and others that are using that. So yeah, apologies for not clarifying that earlier.
Great, thanks, Ryan. That's the only other follow-up question I had right now. We encourage, got about 10 minutes here, or a few more minutes at the end, if anything else you like, or ways that internal processes that you have in your department that might vary a little bit with what Ryan just demoed. So we're happy to walk through that with you. But Ryan, I'm not sure if you touched on this, but what kind of documentation do we need to get a department set up? You know, I know we take photos and spreadsheets and Google Sheets and whatever you're using, and we'll import them. Maybe you can touch on that a little more.
Yeah, sure. Basically, whatever check sheets or whatever information you have right now, you can just email that over to us. So a lot of time it's you know, Word documents of check sheets or Excel spreadsheets. My build team won't like me saying this, but we've actually had some departments that have literally, you know, just paper check sheets. They don't have it digital in any way, so they just basically fax over those paper spreadsheets, and we'll even transform those into the system. So whatever format you have, you can just send those over. Our goal is to make it as simple as possible for you all. We realize you have a million things on your plate. No one I've talked to got into the fire service to set up software programs, but that so we try to take that project off your plate. That's our specialty. So yeah, just send us whatever you have. Particularly on the vehicles, it tends to be a lot of check sheets, you know, a lot of Word documents or Excel spreadsheets. And once you send those over, like I talked about before, we'll take everything that you gave us, we import it into the system, get it all set up for you, and then basically hand it back turnkey so it's ready to roll out to the crews.